Yeah, Priest of Forgotten Gods, quite a bit less effective against Wilderness Reclamation than it is against Scorch Spitter at all. Mayhem Devil, kind of same situation against those same cards. All right, well, I was told we were starting on the other side of the bracket, but we were looking at, I guess, Milner and Wu here.
Well, we can try to see if Wu can go 8-0 into 11-0 into champion here, the undefeated record all the way throughout. I'm excited to see it. I don't really care to watch another Team of Reclamation on camera.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Just quick apologies to the audience for setting up the wrong matchup.
you don't need to apologize to them. They get it. They're also just like way happier, so it's fine.
That is true. I like these dog sleeves on the mono red deck too. How can you root against this?
I mean, maybe you're a cat person.
If you're a cat person who just doesn't like dogs, I don't trust you.
I like dogs.
Exactly.
You know, if I see a dog on a sleeve, I'm not like, ooh, doggo.
Is that what I said? Or did I say I like these dogs on these sleeves?
No, but you were right there in spirit, so.
Scorch Spitter getting things started. Rest of Wu's hand, a little slow. There's a Shock and a Torbrand. You know, the Torbrand's nice. Shock kills some things.
This isn't exactly a great hand for either player, but being on the draw and having kind of a weak opener, Milner actually is getting a lot of freebie damage here by just like not getting decimated by the triple 1-drop or 1-drop into Light of the Stage 1-drop draw. And there's an Anax off the top, but without that, this would have been like a breeze.
That was a choice rip, I gotta say. Anax off the top right here on turn 3.
No,
Milner at 16 from a couple spitter hits. Let's see what he can do about this.
Now, Anax is not particularly good against something like Claim the Firstborn, but without a way to actually sacrifice something on the battlefield just yet, it's not really that much of a problem.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The Woe Strider's in hand. That's a sacrifice outlet. There's no mana just yet. And check out this sequencing by Milner. This could be very important in a second. Midnight Reaper deployed, Strider kept in the hand. If Wu taps out from this Torbrand, you could see a nice claim Woe Strider turn.
Yeah, Woe Strider to claim the Firstborn, get an attack, yada, yada, yada. But the Shock here plus Scorch Spitter and kind of setting up for a later Torbrand makes a lot more sense because you're basically trying to clear the way. And you're getting in like a reasonable amount of free damage here. And then maybe you get to surprise your opponent next turn with that Torbrand.
Yeah, Shock the blocker out of the way. Here's the backup Spitter. Team comes in. Milner's down to 9. Now, considering that Woe Strider claim play.
Oh, luckily not going to get punished, but doing this in the wrong order. Woe Strider should always be played second here because if the Woe Strider gets shocked in response, it's a disaster.
Yeah, that would be brutal. And it's a little nice that you get a token by sacrificing the Anax. Unfortunately, it can't block, and Milner's a lot more interested in blocking than attacking.
Oh, absolutely. The stealing the Anax is obviously like step 1, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. And the Scorch Spitters combined with Torbrand are going to do a significant amount of damage and still need to be blocked.
The land stride to the bottom. We'll go back to Paul Wu. Finds a Shock. Pretty inviting to just jam the Torbrand and attack with these Spitters.
Yeah, each one deals 3 with the trigger. So that's going to be a 6-point swing before combat damage. It's going to involve a chump block and a trade. So this is a super good turn for Paul Wu in a matchup on the play where I would consider he had a pretty mediocre opener, but a pretty good follow-up finish.
Really solid on turn 3, top decking that Anax. Right now, these Spitters are getting in for a lot of damage. Milner's got a lot of work to do here because from 3, if one of these Spitters sticks around, that combines with that Shock to make a pretty easy lethal even without the Torbrand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Woe Strider going to trade with a Scorch Spitter. Goat is going to be scried away, blocking the other. Sees a Woe Strider on top, keeps that one.
Yeah, it gives him another sacrifice outlet so he can use Claim the Firstborn to take the other Scorch Spitter. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's a sequence in hand that actually deals with Torbrand, and Torbrand plus Shock here is actually just a GG. At the very least, you can't deal with Torbrand and the Scorch Spitter, and dealing 1 point of damage with either extra is enough to get the job done.
Right. The Scorch Spitter, Torbrand, Shock equation, you have to get rid of 2 of those things.
Right. Even though he has Mayhem Devil, doesn't quite have the sacrifice outlet and enough mana to do everything that he wants to do. Given enough mana, could clean up everything and maybe actually steal the game, but not when you're stuck on 5. I mean, it's only turn 5. Right. And he's interacted almost every turn.
Yeah, some swings that against certain setups would be pretty brutal. But here you see Ghost Rider claim the Firstborn on Scorch Spitter. That's all well and good, but Shock upstairs is lethal. Wu just soaks up the hit here, goes to 16. That's all fine. Milner will get to scry, get to see the card. I suppose scrying bottom, you'd never draw it anyway, but there's not going to be another turn. As Paul Wu, when we go back that way, that Shock is going upstairs.
Classic burn guy strategy. Paul Wu showing why he's currently 9-0 in this tournament. Going to go up a game here against Tim Milner in what I would consider a pretty bad matchup. But luckily just had the tools to get the job done there in game 1. Really nicely done.
Definitely benefiting from that modified play draw rule being on the play by virtue of being our first seed.
A lot of people are really kind of like self-aware inside the tournament of like what records they need to make top 8. But like the people who usually win the tournament are the ones figuring out if they should play like the last round out, you know, to see if like they can get first seed, you know, to try to be on the play for the rest of the top 8. Like,
I've definitely had that tournament where I didn't play for seeding because I wanted to get lunch or something and just took an ID, and after losing in the top 8, really wish I just played for seeding.
Yeah, I also always lose after I draw into top 8 because I go eat, and then when quarterfinal starts, I'm a big old slug. I'm a pretty big old slug by nature, but especially when you eat like Subway or something after round 8.
I like that Subway was an example of a food that makes you feel sluggish.
Yeah, like trash tier garbage around your LGS, you know? Like sometimes it's like the pile of sesame chicken and fried rice, you know? Sometimes it's Burger King or whatever, you know?
That's actually where I was going to go. I know Subway's not good. Certainly not saying Subway's good, but my stomping ground for PPTQs was just in the same parking lot as a Burger King.
Nice. Yeah, most of them are. That's usually where the cheap buildings are in town. That's where you'll find the Burger King.
Oh yeah, we were playing tournaments inside of an old Blockbuster. It was a real nice scene.
Yeah, and like nine or 10 of the buildings in the surrounding strip mall were all just like closed down because of lack of business. But not the LGS.
Actually, I'm pretty sure there was a Subway in that plaza too.
Look, sometimes you just have been there, and you know, and it's like reading an old book, like you've read before. You might not remember all the passages, but goddamn, if you don't remember the story,
yeah, you hear something, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's how that goes. Ooh, some heavy mulligans here. Looks like both players on 5 for game number 2. The old Castle Lochthwain Mountain hand for Milner.
Yeah, not exactly the best land to start off with, but it is a black source, and it does allow him to cast the black spells in hand.
Despite a fistful of cheap stuff, it looks like it's going to be 1 spell a turn for the foreseeable future. Traded Scorpion will be the first cast, but Wu needs additional lands to really cast anything of consequence.
Yeah, if Wu doesn't draw a land pretty quick here, we might see this cascade out of control, but a land off the top would put him right back in the game.
Not interested in shocking Serrated Scorpion, and I can't blame him. Milner finds Fabled Passage. It's going to be very useful for emptying this hand, and will be important for casting the high-impact spells in the deck if he's able to draw those.
Yeah, unfortunately, Paul Wu is suffering from the thing that I dislike most about Arena, in that if you have a play, it gives you the option to make a play, and there's nothing really you can do about it. So his opponent knows he has a shock in hand because they know deckless. It's only shock unless he's like hitting full control mode every single phase or every single turn or whatever, which just like never happens. So he chooses to play a Gutter Bones here instead of the Priest of Forgotten Gods because of that information leak. And honestly, it might actually just end up putting Paul Wu a little too far behind because he didn't play the shock on like turn 1 or whatever for the Serrated Scorpion.
Still no second land for Wu. Finds him cast Fervent Champion, but Mayhem Devil off the top for Milner. That draw means business.
Yeah, it's a good one. It really incentivizes this Priest of Forgotten Gods, though, which will eat up the whole turn, which is actually a pretty good thing, right? Like, it's going to eat up Paul's entire turn to kill it. One way or another, it's going to eat the shock, or if there's a land, there's probably no other 1-drop because the 1/1 was drawn and cast last turn.
Another miss on the land for Wu. Shock takes care of Priest of Forgotten Gods, but nothing else to do. Just has to hang back with that Fervent Champion.
This is 100% a Giganta game, by the way. You like never see Giganta get cast. You like never see Giganta get cast. That's 100% getting cast this game.
Good game for Colossopede, I tell you what.
All right, Hank Hill. I don't even know what I play here if I'm Paul. Like, to get back in the game, like, there's no sack outlet. I think you just have to gamble. Like, there's no cards in hand either. I think you just kind of have to gamble that no sack outlet's ever drawn, and you just play Runaway Steamkin, because that just allows you to play the most spells if you get super lucky over time.
Well, that's the really awkward thing, right? Is Runaway Steamkin is often a very valuable card because you have so many 1-mana spells or a number of 2-mana spells you can cast, and then you can crank out extra mana with it. But when the rest of your hand all costs 2 or more, and you just hit your second land drop, the Steamkin's not going anywhere, at least not anytime soon. And so you see Wu's going to go for Robber the Rich. It's something that's harder to take out with the Mayhem Devil.
Right.
Dreadhorde Busher. It's not time for Giganta just yet. And a Red Cap Melee off the top for Wu. That's an interesting draw. That's an answer for Mayhem Devil.
It is, but again, there's no sack outlet just yet, and there's no cards in hand, so it's got to be drawn. I think that Paul should have gambled, played the Steamkin last turn, and just hoped to draw like a string of cheap stuff or a land and then a cheap card to be able to double spell, triple spell maybe over the next couple turns. I think that the only way he gets back in this game is to get the Steamkin online and then deal with the Mayhem Devil, and kind of has to get lucky until that point and hope that Milner doesn't draw any ovens or Woe Striders.
There's Red Cap Melee. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying. The Steamkin is the biggest potential advantage. However, we're playing this game where nobody has good attacks, right? Milner's going to pick up this Giganta, so Wu does still have a little time to play here. Now, at this point, he's down a counter on the Robber of the Rich, but might have taken some damage last turn. Might have been taking some more attacks coming his way this turn.
Sure. No, that's a fair assessment. That's just my initial instinct was to play the Steamkin on 2 turns ago. And yes, he would not have an extra counter on it. You're right. But still, you're having to dodge the sack outlet for the most part anyway. Like, the entire battlefield is terrifying on the other side.
No kidding. Anax does join the party. Wu found land number 3. That's a big one. The hand is starting to get unlocked. Milner finds Heartless Act, but this is a 4-power Anax.
I don't believe Heartless Act just matters about counters, I believe. So it should be able to take care of the Anax. It does.
Yeah, it destroys it, but I'm saying you get 2 satyrs.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Anax. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of weird restrictions on some rule spells. I'm just, my bad.
Yeah, so the Anax is taken care of. 2 satyrs replace it. And here's a land off the top. Now Wu can cast Steamkin and a 2-mana spell on the same turn.
True. I kind of like just going Robber of the Rich and then going for Embercleave, though. Or maybe Bone Crusher Giant plus Embercleave for the full-on, combat shenanigans. There's just, no way out. No good blocks.
You know the only card in hand for Milner is Gigantha. So you can largely think about what you're trying to do in terms of maximizing over 2 turns, because if Milner's doing anything about it, it's coming off the top of the deck.
Right. That's fair.
So getting the Steamkin thick, that's going to be the best target for the Embercleave. So I really like this play here. Steamkin plus Robber.
Oh, and that's not even good. The Claim the Firstborn's not even good. There's no sacrifice outlet.
Yeah, this is just, it's time for the 5/5.
Gigantor.
All right, let's see what all Wu can do here. Scorching Dragonfire off the top. Now suddenly we're looking at a ton of mana worth of spells that Wu can just cast this all.
Yes, he can. Thanks for Runaway Steamkin. We can go Scorching Dragonfire into Bone Crusher Giant's Stomp mid-combat or before combat, attack, and then activate Steamkin to put Embercleave on something, and you still got a mana floating.
Not bad.
Not a bad turn. This Runaway Steamkin card might be okay. This Embercleave card might be pretty good too.
Wu's just gonna take a look at this. So there's some really interesting options with the 2 removal spells here. You could just take your Stomp and your Dragonfire, clean up the Gigantha, or you can go for a couple smaller things. There's a lot of different ways you can play this.
I think one of the biggest things, though, is that double killing on the Gigantha doesn't really allow your other creatures to attack too well. And if you just shove in here, you might be able to get a Embercleave double strike on the Gigantha plus a burn spell from like Bone Crusher Giant, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also isn't terrible if like Gigantha jumps in front of Robber and you trade Robber Dragonfire for Gigantha.
Right, or you just let the Embercleave double strike on the Gigantha and just trade, like Robber for Gigantha, and you still have Embercleave run around for next turn, you know?
Sure.
But I think you should do it to protect the Steamkin. So you can still go Embercleave plus either Bone Crusher Giant or the... oh, no, it's just enough. You can, like, stomp one thing, and then Embercleave the Steamkin. It's a 5-powered double striker, and that'll chew up the Gigantha and deal 5 to face.
Pretty good. Yeah, whole team's coming in. We're seeing some blockers lined up, but we are about to see Wu clean up a lot of Milner's battlefield.
Yeah, this is a lot of damage also. It's a lot of damage, it's a lot of simplification, but that's really going to benefit Paul Wu here, I think, just because he has Embercleave left over.
Definitely.
Oh, is there a world? Is there a world where the Claim the Firstborn on the Embercleave creature steals the game, or is this too many blocks?
Oh, so the way that combat's playing out right now, Milner stands to lose his entire battlefield. It's also true that if one more spell is cast, that the Steamkin can just lose its counters, so it hits Wu for a lot less on the way back.
Ah, yes. You can use the ability in response to the Claim the Firstborn. I like it.
We'll see how Wu plays from here. It's going to be Dragonfire on the Butcher before damage. Exile that, not giving away any triggers there. So Steamkin's going to ETH Gigantha, come across for 5 more points. We're going to trade off everything on Milner's side except Serrated Scorpion. Wu's still left with that 5/5 double striker, a Satyr, and Robber of the Rich. Bone Crusher Giant's in hand. Wu could choose to just use Steamkin to cast the 4/3 here.
Yeah, it does just apply just an immense amount of pressure.
And that's going to be the play. Ooh.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, still not quite enough. Yeah, I mean, it starts the chain, right? Like, this is the way he gets back into the game. That was an outrageous draw.
Witch's Oven. Nice combination with Claim the Firstborn. And Milner's got to ask, do I care more about this Bone Crusher Giant or this Runaway Steamkin? Goes for the Steamkin. That at least means the Embercleave will have to be equipped again.
Yeah, it also saves you 2 damage. I like taking the Steamkin for all those reasons.
Makes plenty of sense. Steamkin's going to attack. That's going to be for 6. So Wu is down to 8.
Yep. Witch's Oven can sack the Steamkin, and that allows for a Cauldron Familiar to return. Gutter Bones can be returned to hand and cast as well.
Yeah, a lot of material recommitted to the battlefield from Milner. Pretty substantial swing.
Pretty absurd considering the last 2 draw steps were Claim the Firstborn and Witch's Oven. Just a nice sequence. And it might not be enough. I want to make that clear. It might not be enough to get him back in the game, but at the very least, it's a start. And one more peel, a third sequential peel, might actually end up stealing the game. If Embercleave is not lethal, and then let's say another Claim the Firstborn comes off the top, it might just end it.
Right. Yeah, a lot of pressure on Milner's next draw step here. If you're Wu, you almost don't want to put the cleave on the Bone Crusher Giant because you're at 8 and a claim would get you on the way back.
Right, but with no cards in hand, I mean, you're facing down a Serrated Scorpion and a Cauldron Familiar. It's a lot of residual damage. I think you just got to equip and just kill over 2 turns. I think you just put it on the Bone Crusher Giant, swing in for 8. Maybe even hold back the other 2 creatures.
Right, well, here comes the cleave on the Giant. This game's going to end soon. It won't be long before we find out whose favor that's in.
Yeah, I think you should always put your opponent to the test if they don't have. If you know they don't have it yet, put them to the test. Make them have it on the next turn. Make them draw it. As that's my mentality. It's worked out pretty good so far.
Especially considering that these Robber of the Riches, they wouldn't hit cards. And if Milner still had, I don't know, Giganta in hand, or like a card that you knew about and you weren't scared about, then you could maybe accrue some small value. But here we see Bone Crusher Giant going to work. It's attacking for 10 here. Scorpion is going to soak up 2 of that and get Wu for 2 points on the way back.
It's going to put him to 6. Cauldron Familiar puts him to 5. On his turn, he can sack it to the Witch's Oven, put him to 4. If Gutterbones can somehow sneak in damage, that puts him to 2. But a single Claim the Firstborn on the Bone Crusher Giant is enough to steal the game. Let's see what the draw is.
Gutter Bones. Gutter Ball.
One more shot. One more shot with the Castle Lockthwain. You get 1 redraw.
Yeah, that the castle activation would only put him to 6, so that's fine. Bone Crusher Giant would put him to 4, so castle into claim. That's what we're looking for here. Definitely can't block your way out of an Embercleave Bone Crusher Giant. Now with the life totals the way that they are, you gotta activate this castle. And here we go. Oh my god! Oh my god! Claim the Firstborn off of Castle Lockthwain? Tim Milner is about to force a game for 3.
Oh, and it's not even the match. We have a game 3 here between these 2.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Paul, I feel so bad.
Oh. Tim Milner hanging on. Can he end Paul Wu's undefeated streak today? What a turn.
What that's actually some good sportsmanship from Paul Wu. Just right clicks the nice, like, holy crap.
Yeah. All right, that's pretty good. You gotta hand it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can block, whatever. Let's trample over for 8.
Look, maybe Arena glitches out and assigns all trample damage to the air. You know?
What a sequence of draws there from Tim Milner.
3 turns in a row. Claim the Firstborn, Witch's Oven, claim the Firstborn. Oh, sorry, there's a Gutter Bones in there, but then a draw off of...
Right, yeah, Castle Lockthwain came in clutch.
Usually does. That land is extremely good.
Yeah, no kidding. That entire cycle, just kind of berserk.
Oh, yeah. No, I love them. Even, like, every single one of them's great. Like, every one of the castles are great. Actual great.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, not super overpowered. Like, exactly the type of thing I want, where there's downside to playing multiple copies. Sometimes they enter tapped and mess you up, but they give you some minor effect or whatever as the game progresses, so you get to use your mana. Like, they're just really well designed and really well executed lands. I just love them.
Yeah, I could not agree more strongly. I mean, like, in recent standard design, there's definitely a couple cards, some fringe elements of the formats. Obviously, there's been a number of bannings in standard, and some new cards have been banned across multiple formats. But a lot of the meat and potatoes cards, like the castle cycle is excellent. Adventure creature is excellent. I like a lot of the cards going on this red deck. Light up the stage, Runaway Steamkin. Very cool designs.
No, I think it's important to really recognize like fun cards and good design, you know, especially like when people are rowdy about, you know, what they see as potential problems for any given format. And kudos to WotC and the team for putting together some really nice lands that see play in like a lot of formats, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sleeving up a new cube in our off rounds today, and I gotta say, current Magic card design, we're kind of a gilded age for new cube includes.
That's true.
Okay, Paul Wu gets another crack at it on the play here. Keeps on 7. It's a little land heavy, but there's a nice little curve here starting on turn 2 with a couple Steamkins and a Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah, I'm really digging Milner's hand. I think Milner's like Rakdos deck here looking quite good. The Priest of Forgotten Gods on 2 might be sweet, but that Bone Crusher Giant probably going to keep it in check for now.
Robber of the Rich, the draw from Wu, goes for that over the Steamkins. Gonna try to steal some value with that one.
Yeah, probably wants to get a few cards underneath it while he can, because as the game progresses, Milner likely going to be able to empty his hand. So having like Acclaim the Firstborn or Witch's Oven that you have in your back pocket for later might be like enough to seal the deal. And apparently it's enough to play over Runaway Steamkin, which is usually the premier 2-drop, because it allows you to run away with the game over time.
You know, I like what you're saying about using the robber to, if you could hit it, claim the Firstborn, that would be ideal. As you see Dreadhorde Butcher rattled off there, just get some red spells so you can actually grow the Steamkins more quickly would be the ideal case.
Right. I mean, right now though, the robber is just constantly just trading at the very worst, and with that Butcher underneath it, like next turn, Wu can play the Steamkin, attack with the robber, get another card under it, and then just play a Dreadhorde Butcher post combat, and that's just like pretty darn good. You ask me. Oh, but it might even be worse than that. It might even be worse than that.
Let's see Woe Strider here for Milner. See what Wu wants to do to add to the battlefield. Another Bone Crusher Giant off the top. Quite a few options. You could play both Steamkins. You could play one Steamkin and attack and post-combat that Butcher. You could play Stomp on the Woe Strider. You could wait and Stomp on Milner's turn.
Yeah, there's a couple options. I like main phase Stomp on the Woe Strider and attack for 2. It is the only sack outlet in play. You've already killed a Priest of Forgotten Gods. The odds of them having a 3rd sack outlet, not super high. Unfortunately for Milner, or sorry, for Wu, Milner has 2 more in hand. And next turn's Woe Strider plus Claim the Firstborn on the Runaway Steamkin might be pretty bad.
Here's something that's really nice about this line, is you saw Wu sacrifice the goat to scry. Thank you for that Priest of Forgotten Gods you scried to the top. I'll take that with my Robber of the Rich.
Thanks, B. Yeah, and since those cards cost, effectively colorless mana for the Robber of the Rich, if Milner doesn't take care of the Robber, next turn could be a really powerful Runaway Steamkin turn with all those cheap cards underneath, especially there's like multiple red ones under there.
Still a solid draw for Milner, though, as Mayhem Devil comes off the top, and Fabled Passage here. Milner looking at Woe Strider plus Claim the Firstborn.
I think Milner's about to get real greedy and going to get extremely punished for it.
You were saying?
Okay, so he played Woe Strider and not the Claim the Firstborn, right? Mm-hmm. So I was just going to let it play out because I was very curious what the top card of Paul Wu's deck was going to be. But this turn, we could go Runaway Steamkin, attack with the Robber. If there are 2 spells underneath, like there was like one card that went under super early that I wasn't sure about. Like I don't recall the card, but
I want to say we have a land, a Dreadhorde Butcher, and a Priest of Forgotten Gods.
Okay, if that's it, then there's like not a ton that's going to happen, but the Robber can hit something super good here.
Here comes the Robber. We have an Embereth Shieldbreaker, a Goblin Piker.
Yeah.
Gutterbones gets in the way. Paul Wu could cast quite a few cards this turn.
Could go like Butcher, Shield Breaker, make 3 red, play another mana, play Steamkin, play Priest of Forgotten God, some sequence like that, or something very similar. Maybe Steamkin first, then Shield Breaker, float 3, play Dreadhorde, play Priest of Forgotten Gods.
Yeah, emptying all these 2s and then having the Bone Crusher Giants as leftovers for next turn would be really solid. So here's that second Steamkin. First one gets a second counter.
Alternatively, could just play 2 Bone Crusher Giants, but I think you just want to cast the spells that you got from Robber of the Rich now. Otherwise, you just might not get to cast them.
Right, the Robber's down. There's no more rogues. Here's Dreadhorde Butcher. Let's grow those Steamkin. Yeah, and I imagine Goblin Piker and Priest of Forgotten Gods is how you finish up here.
Oh, you can do it. You can play a Bone Crusher too because the other Steamkin comes down and gets the 3rd counter. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Priest of Forgotten Gods is not red, so it's not
right.
Quite enough.
If there were a Witch's Oven or a food, you know, the Shield Breaker would be able to push you a little further on mana.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that's a quirky thing. If you don't know this one, if you have your opponent's adventure card in a zone where you can cast it, if you cast the first spell, the creature goes on an adventure for you, no matter whose deck it came from. As long as you cast it, you get the adventure creature.
Oh, that's cool. That's not how I thought it would work anyway.
It is not very intuitive. At least I would say it's not.
I would actually argue the opposite. I would say that for a newer player, that would make a lot of sense. But for like players who've been around a while, like it doesn't make that much sense as far as like how previous rule interactions have.
Sure. Yeah, there's just definitely some things that happen where it's like I've been playing Magic too long to understand this.
All right. Well, we're about to have an outrageous turn here from Tim Milner. It was a good turn from Wu, but it wasn't that good.
Here's Mayhem Devil. Still have that Sacrifice Outlet and Woe Strider. Got that Claim the Firstborn, got that Fabled Passage. All right, so Sacrifice Fabled Passage, Mayhem Devil trigger. Gonna point that as Priest of the Forgotten Gods.
Oh, he deals the damage to the priest. I actually thought that he was going to claim the Firstborn, the priest, and then use the Mayhem Devil to just chop down one or both of the Steamkins, but it looks like he's going to steal the Steamkin instead. And just kind of make some Woe Strider sacrifices to deal with other things.
Claim the Firstborn on Steamkin. Steamkin attacks for 3. If you're going to put a damage on the priest, I almost like sacrificing the goat before you give the opponent a chance to block. But Steamkin connects anyway.
I guess if you do that, that incentivizes him to just let damage resolve, and then he can sack the both creatures and kill the other runaway Steamkin. So this way you just at least get to save your other Steamkin.
All right, Steamkin sacked, priest down, looking at a swamp on top of the deck. He's fine with that. That'll stay there.
Yeah, it needs the mana for the Woe Strider, and just in general, the deck is fairly mana hungry.
Makes sense. Now the goat is sacrificed. Take care of that Dreadhorde Butcher. Wu gets 1 point of damage. I imagine that goes upstairs. It will. Milner to 11.
Yeah. Wu does have the 6th land, so he can play both Bone Crusher Giants, and that also will give him access to a fully powered Steamkin if he draws another spell to play. Ooh.
Shock's not the worst.
It is not.
I was looking up there through the lag and everything, wondering if we might see an Embercleave. But we did not.
Not this game. This is a really interesting game. I am lasered in. I just want to know what Wu decides to do. There's so many options at the disposal because of the Runaway Steamkin's mana ability, but for the most part, Wu can play all the cards. Now it's about how you want to sequence. I vote Shock Woe Strider, play Bone Crusher, attack, post combat. If they didn't block with the Mayhem Devil, play the other Bone Crusher Giant. Right now, if they do block, just
play
let it happen.
One Bone Crusher pre-combat and attack.
I
think you want to kill the Devil more than you want to kill the Strider.
I mean, that's fair. Do you attack with the Shield Breaker?
Oh yeah, I want them to think that's a good block. Then I shock them, and then post combat, I use my Steamkin for the second Bone Crusher. You see shock on Woe Strider, Steamkin to 3. Here's 1 Bone Crusher Giant. This makes that Steamkin a good attacker. Could also just choose no attacks and play the Bone Crusher. We're gonna see the attack though. Milner to 7 off that hit.
There's like very little reason to chump block with the Mayhem Devil. The only thing it does is it stops Wu from playing the other Bone Crusher Giant, but at the cost of losing arguably the best card in your entire deck.
Right, yeah, the cost very likely too high there. Back over to Tim Milner. Some Woe Striders in the graveyard that can escape. 1 in hand, so you can try to cast multiple spells. Gonna play the one from hand. Cast Cauldron Familiar as well. Couple things you can sack, but Wu is still at 12. There's quite a bit of work to do on the life total front.
Yeah, those 3 cards that you see at the bottom are in the graveyard. 2 Woe Strider and a Gutter Bones. Can't deploy anything else really to the battlefield this turn. I was curious if he was going to main phase to kill this Runaway Steamkin. I quite like this play.
Sack Goat, put 1 point there. Scry 6th land, that can go to the bottom.
Yeah, Gigantha only needs 5.
And there, sacrifice the cat, take care of that Steamkin, take a look at a Village Rites on top. That's more interesting than a land, though the mana and resources are a little tight. He will keep it on top.
It's one of those, I don't think it's going to be cast next turn, but if the game continues, it might be extremely good. I probably would have put it on bottom because I think you're digging for very specific things. And your entire game plan next turn is just to bring back a Woe Strider. Like, that's the best you got. And Village Rites doesn't really play into that.
So this is not the most impactful top deck for Wu, but it is well above average because of these 2 Bone Crusher Giants, as we see Anax showing up.
I'm pretty sure it's second best. Giving you multiple Satyr tokens, no matter what happens, is pretty darn good. And the only other card that I would want that I can think of off the top of my head is actual Embercleave.
Right. I was certainly thinking about the cleave. This one will do, though. You see an attack with all of the creatures. Like Devil jumping in front of Shield Breaker. Wu's fine. That's still worth a Satyr there.
Yeah, he gets 1 off of that, and he gets 2 off the Bone Crusher Giant, and deals 4. It is going to leave the Mayhem Devil on Tim Milner's side, but that was always going to be the case. This just kind of guarantees extra damage. If I'm Milner, I might actually consider just trading with each of the 4/3s right now.
Definitely a tough spot. It's a perfect information spot too. Right? If you're Milner, you know what you're drawing. You know that you're probably escaping Woe Strider on your next turn. Yeah.
I think the problem is just not going to have enough raw bodies, but maybe he's able to accumulate enough raw bodies if the Mayhem Devil sticks around long enough.
All right, so Devil eats the 2/1. You see a trade with the Bone Crusher Giant on the Woe Strider. Milner falls to 4. 3 fresh Satyrs show up. Very relevant that Wu does not control a Castle Embereth with the battlefield this wide.
Yep, not yet. Can draw 1. Does have 4 copies in his deck.
Right.
Mistaken.
And that's just one more top deck that would be excellent.
Torbrand, Embercleave, Castle Embereth, all exceptional. Most haste creatures are good enough. The way it stands, if Woe Strider comes back, what's going to happen is you're going to have a Woe Strider block a big guy, Mayhem Devil block a little Satyr, and the Goat token blocking another big guy, and then a sacrifice from Woe Strider and a ping of a token. So really only 1 token is going to be getting through on damage.
Fervent Champion off the top for Wu. Now combat's a little bit more interesting. The Anax is down to a 3-power creature. Not a great attacker against 5/4 Woe Strider.
Sure.
Even if you play the Fervent Champion, that's going to turn into a Satyr pretty quickly if it's deemed to matter because of Devil plus Strider and that goat.
Yeah, so Fervent Champion's going to change the math slightly for the Anax, making it a 4, but Milner can just stop that mid-combat by sacking the goat token after blocks to kill the 1/1.
Right. So Fervent Champion and then an attack with the team. It's aggressive, but I like it.
Play one way.
Your whole board can get swept up pretty quickly with that Mayhem Devil, so just getting these Satyrs in there before they're swept up easily, I dig it.
Let's see if Milner can find the block, because I think the best block here was just he's gonna trade with the Bone Crusher Giant. That's interesting. I feel like a chump block with the goat on it and letting Mayhem Devil eat one of the Satyr tokens would have been a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of the real upside Wu is looking for here. Getting that Devil off the table would be a huge sigh of relief.
Oh, absolutely. There's so little resources for Milner to work with, and he needs every scrap of it to keep himself in this game. He's at such a low life total here. And there's going to be so many Satyrs after it's all said and done.
Falls to 2. We get some replacement Satyrs. Priest of Forgotten Gods off the top. That's not anything.
It is not. I think there maybe has to be like a Hail Mary Village Rites on the Woe Strider. I don't really know a 2-card combo that can stop this many threats.
Yeah, you need some kind of sweeping effect. There's nothing like that here. There's Priest of Forgotten Gods. Village Rites. Sack that 1/2, 2 last looks.
My kingdom for a Goblin Chain Whirler.
Cauldron Familiar is 1 life, but there's just 7 Satyrs over there.
Yeah, I think the block last turn might have been just a slightly off because it left them with a little too many Satyrs, and without Mayhem Devil, there's no combination of blocks and sacrifices that actually chew up all these attackers, and you're just so low on life.
Cauldron Familiar and good game. Paul Wu advancing to 10-0. This robber of the rich ass irrelevant. The game was locked up. Paul Wu's mono red aggro deck refusing to lose. We see advancing to the finals here where invitational champion Eli Cassis is waiting for him with the Boogeyman. Team of Reclamation in the finals.
Man, what a match.